Jules the Doula here, welcoming you to the Virtual Mama Connection. Listen in with me every week as we bring you birth stories and experiences straight from our parents' hearts, always providing you a lifeline of education and communication, keeping you ahead of the game with the best care providers and educators. And just a little reminder out there, anything you hear on our podcast is not to be used as medical advice. Please visit our disclaimer on thevirtualmamaconnection.com. Hey, Jules the Doula here again on the Virtual Mama Connection, and we're going to have some fun today. We've got Lauren Lyell back. She was just on a while ago talking about her newborns 101 class. She's a powerhouse, guys. She also is an IBCLC. She's got a breastfeeding 101 class. This woman is going to be a mama of 3 coming up. And she's just a very lovely, lovely person, good heart. She's also a pediatric nurse over at Scottsdale Shea. So she's with the newborns all the time and is a world of information. So let's listen to what she's got to say. Hey, Lauren, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for being here with me again.
Thanks for having me.
We're going to have fun talking about breastfeeding and all that good stuff. And tell us a little bit about the class that you formulated for moms and like, why should they be taking a breastfeeding class before we even have a baby?
Yeah, so I'm a big supporter of knowledge is power. This is such a big transition when you have a baby, and the more you can know going into it, the better. So breastfeeding, I always believe natural does not equal easy. And so having more knowledge about breastfeeding, about, how babies eat, how frequently they need to eat, makes the whole experience a lot less stressful for moms who take that class beforehand instead of having to figure it out, when they're exhausted, full of hormones, and, maybe having some struggles.
Yeah, I agree. I think I see even moms right after birth when we're trying to help that baby and mom get a good latch, that first latch right after delivery. I feel like the moms that have taken a class that have some kind of baseline of education, it just seems to kind of filter in and sink in a little bit like, oh, that's what they were talking about, or that makes sense. And it just seems to kind of flow a little better. Not to say that they don't end up having some struggles. I mean, I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and I will speak from experience, when I had my first, I thought, oh, breastfeeding, this is like no big deal. Like everyone does it, I can do this. And I had a lot of struggles with it, and it was painful. I
Mhm.
never knew it was going to be so painful. Do you hear that from most moms as well?
I do. That happened to me with my first baby, which is why I got into this field to begin with. My nipples were cracked and bleeding, and I was crying every single time she would latch. I was like, what is this? Like, everyone just said baby would latch on, we'd breastfeed, we'd be good to go. And that often isn't the experience that moms have.
No, not at all.
So yes, I mean, there's a few things with pain. One is that you have that huge cascade of hormones. So sometimes, parts of your body are more sensitive than they normally would be anyways. Two, maybe, it's a user error. Maybe baby can't latch because the position is wrong, or how we're getting them on is wrong. Or sometimes babies have oral ties that need to be released, and the muscles in their mouth just aren't working correctly. So there's a ton of things that can cause pain in the beginning. And I feel like probably 90% of the moms that I see in home are struggling with some sort of pain or discomfort.
And the latch has a lot to do with it,
Yes,
correct? Yeah.
100% latch is the cornerstone of it. So that's something that I talk a ton about in my class is what we're looking for in a good latch, ways that we can position baby and support baby to get that good latch. And then what to do if we're noticing some of these warning signs, who to reach out to for help. Do we go to the pediatrician? Do we go to a pediatric dentist? Do I maybe just need to have me come out and take a look and tweak some things?
Do you feel like you're a good judge where like identifying that tongue tie, like the tongue tie, lip tie? Yeah, that's great.
I will say the posterior ties are a little harder, but there's 4 different levels of ties. And so, all of us probably have some sort of level of tie in our mouth, but sometimes they do need to be clipped because baby can just not nurse effectively. You can do all the things that you should be doing, and it's not going to work until they can move their tongue.
The whole lip and tongue tie thing is fascinating to me. And when I first was in this and then hearing a lot about it, I thought, you know, I mean, I'm going to date myself here, but my oldest is 29. We never heard about lip
Hmm.
ties, tongue ties. And I have a daddy client who's a pediatric dentist, and he talked about that. And he said, look, he goes, I get a lot of parents who talk about, he sees the infants with the lip tongue or the tongue tie that he needs to do the procedure on. But he said, I have a lot of older patients that are getting the tongue tie procedure because it affects so much. And I thought, like, speech and, oh, the list goes on. So it really is something to look at. Yeah, for breastfeeding, right? But
Yeah, absolutely.
if a baby has that, we really want to identify that and then correct it for breastfeeding, but also for the future health of the child.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it is something that you can just work with baby and stretch those muscles. There's 7 muscles in the tongue. So just releasing the tie doesn't always fix it. You have to kind of retrain that muscle memory, but sometimes it does need to be clipped. And I work with families pretty extensively on either side of that spectrum, whether they do need to go down that road or they don't. But I definitely don't recommend every single tie get cut
Sure.
because sometimes that won't fix the problem.
Right. I do know the families that have had the procedure done,
Mhm.
they have always been given a lot of exercises that they're supposed to do with the baby, like, every day. So to keep helping with that. But yeah. So tell me everything that's included in this class. So if we have a listener, a mommy listening, and she's like, geez, I need a breastfeeding 101 class, what am I going to learn?
Yes, so it's a pretty extensive class. We start off about talking about the anatomy of breastfeeding, how all the tissues work, and the supply and demand system, because having that knowledge is really going to help get your supply in once baby is born. And then we kind of talk about the differences of your milks. So you start off with that colostrum, how it transitions into mature milk, and then when your supply is really established. That's also good for moms to know because there can be a lot of fluctuation in there. Then we talk about, feeding cues, what to expect in those first days, what we're looking for in the latch, how babies should be eating, how frequently, and then definitely tons of breast care. If we are having pain, things we can do to relieve it. Um, and getting those resources, connected right away. Do we need to talk to our pediatrician? Should I be making an appointment? Because I would never recommend moms just, tough it out. Sometimes you need nipple rest. Sometimes we need to pump. So we talk about pumping, we talk about supplementation, if that's something that families have to go through. So it takes about an hour to 90 minutes to really go through everything. But it's a pretty extensive class, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from moms that they feel a lot more prepared. And then if they do experience issues, a lot of times they can identify kind of what the issue is for when I come to their home to see them.
I love it. Now, one thing that I know you do different on classes than some that are out there is that this is a live class, right? So if they're taking the class with you, it's virtual, but it's live, so they get that Q&A with you.
Yes.
Is that correct?
So,
Yeah.
yep, it's a live class. It's done virtually, and we definitely do tons of Q&A. It's really helpful for parents. Sometimes they bounce ideas off of each other. And then at the end of the class, I send an ebook that really goes into a ton of breastfeeding topics as well for parents' reference for later on.
I bet a big number one question you get from moms are questions on pumps.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, there's so many options. I actually have an entire workshop on exclusively pumping and bottle feeding because there's so much information. But in my breastfeeding class, we do kind of touch on, what kind of pump is best, how to tell if the flange is fitting, how often we should be pumping, and just some basic pump care for safety and breast milk storage.
Great. What about the Haka?
The
You know,
Haka, I love the Haka.
I do
Um,
too.
Yes, so we do kind of touch on that. Those are great for moms who have, a higher supply just to catch that letdown, especially at the beginning. Your body is kind of learning what it's doing. So if baby feeds on one side, you'll still often leak on the other. And so I always encourage moms to just have a Haka, with them so that they can collect that. And if they
Sure.
supplement baby with that, that's great. If they want to,
Or
throw
if
it in the
dad
use
wants to feed, right?
basket, yeah, if dad wants to feed, it really gives you a lot of options. And that's one of the million types of breast pumps that are out there.
Yeah, I love it. A lot of people don't know about the Haka. So
No.
if you're listening to this, it's HAAKA. Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep, it's a silicone manual pump. It just looks like a silicone bottle with kind of like a flower top to it. And it just has constant suction that catches, your extra letdown on your breast that's not being fed from.
Yeah, no, that's a lifesaver. And then you cover different types of bottles because I know the bottle is a big thing. Like you said, sometimes families need to supplement and there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, we just want a well-fed baby. Correct.
Absolutely. We do go over some pace feeding to make it most breast-like. We talk about what nipples will work best. And I always answer family questions about bottles. I'm pretty big on, whatever works best for your family is what's best for your family. But I always like to go over nipple types and paced feeding to support that breastfeeding relationship.
Well, and you just made me think of something because you are such a warm, lovely person and you have the perspective of, like you said, what's best for the family.
Mhm.
Everyone's going to decide to breastfeed for a different amount of time, right? So when I do know that after, let's say they've taken the class and they're like, oh my gosh, I still need some more help. You can go out to their homes or even help them virtually, right? Either way to help support the mom that might need a little extra help because that happens to a lot of my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's one, great to have me in your back pocket as a resource once you've taken my class. And
Definitely.
two, I can definitely come out to the home. Sometimes it is just a handful of questions and moms just want to do it virtually. We do that. I've come out when moms have, maybe had a successful breastfeeding relationship and now they have to go back to work. So can you come out and help me, set up my pump, learn how to use it, check the flange size, how do I store my milk, how do I clean my parts? Those are options as well. Um, and so I work with something called the Lactation Network. It's something you can just Google, thelactationnetwork.com. And what's great about them is they'll actually, if you're covered, pay for your breastfeeding class. And then they'll pay for 5 in home visits following the class once baby is born.
That's
So
wonderful.
it's a ton of support that's available, that's completely free for parents.
Well, I can't beat that, right?
Right.
I love that you take insurance.
Yes.
I mean, let's be real, having a baby is expensive. And what's so nice is that that insurance piece of it allows moms to not be able to say, oh, it's just too expensive. I can't call her out. You know, I
It
don't want to
really
get the help.
And
Yeah,
I do offer, for moms who don't qualify for that lactation network, I offer the option for a self pay that's a discounted rate. And I always give my moms a week of support because all the time you'll hear, I had a lactation consultant come out. We were able to get baby to latch. Everything was going good. She went home. And then the next day I was having problems again. And now, a lot of those families can't necessarily afford for me to come every single day. So that's why I offer that week of support to really text or email with mom about what she's going through, if we need to change our feeding plan at all. And then I also take HSA and FSA cards. So some families who, have to be cash pay, they can use those benefits as well.
yeah, I take that. And I think that's a wonderful option because a lot of families have it through their work and you might as well let them use it, right?
For sure.
Yeah. So the supplementing, talk to me a little bit about that. Like, so you would go into the class. I know you have a whole section on it, but you'll touch on that where do you tell them certain formulas that are good or is it also kind of like the philosophy of, hey, it's okay if your baby is a little guzzler like Jules had, I couldn't produce enough, quite honestly, to feed him and keep him content. And so I did have to do formula. I find that when I talk to a lot of my moms, like they think this is really bad, right?
Yes, I see that all the time too. So often, babies, it'll start with breastfeeding is painful, or maybe, baby's jaundiced or something, and they're not eating a ton. They go in and they're not hitting their weight marks. So the pediatrician will say supplement. What does that mean? So that's why I really talk to moms about how much is an appropriate amount for a newborn. How can we pace feed? I always recommend moms go with whatever formula their pediatrician recommends or they feel comfortable. I'm always happy to answer any questions about formula, but often for those supplementing moms, we will also get them on a pumping schedule, because I see that too. Families are really concerned. I didn't want to give my baby any formula at all. Now I'm having to give some. So we work on pumping to boost that supply. In my class, we also talk about antenatal hand expression, which is where you express colostrum before baby is born. And you can actually save that and use that to supplement should you need to after baby's born. So those families who, are just I do not want to do formula. I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to not do that. I love to talk about antenatal hand expression so that if we're in that situation, we now have mom's own milk to be feeding baby.
So they can, that's awesome that they can express the cholesterol before baby's even here.
Yeah, it's amazing. You always want to double check with your care provider, but starting at 37 weeks for 5 minutes a day each breast, you can express that colostrum. You can draw it up in a syringe, and you can even take it to the hospital with you if that's something you want to do.
How would they store it?
So you always want to freeze it. Colostrum's pretty low volume, so you're not gonna probably have ounces of it ready to
Sure.
go, which is fine because babies don't eat a ton at the beginning, but you can, express into a medicine cup, drop with a syringe. You always want to time and date. And most of the oral syringes, if you were to buy them, on Amazon, have caps on them. So you cap it, time and date it, and you keep it in the freezer until baby's born.
So how many weeks then can we save it? Like,
There, so in a freezer, any sort of breast milk is good for 6 months, but
okay,
you don't want to start expressing that colostrum until 37 weeks. Sometimes too much nipple stimulation can cause you to go into labor. So you want to wait
exactly. Yeah.
your term. And if you have any sort of high risk, then the recommendation is usually not to do it. But if you're low risk, you're 37 weeks and you only want to do it for 5 minutes per side each breast. We're not doing, an hour-long pumping session.
Right.
Most of the time that won't cause moms to have contractions or go into labor early. And it's just really nice to know in the back of your mind that if you need that nipple rest or baby's having trouble with weight gain, you have that storage already there. And a lot of moms become a lot more comfortable with handling their breasts because a lot of people aren't used to handling their breast in that feeding way. And there's definitely a learning curve to it. So by having some comfort already there, it's easier when baby comes to manipulate your breasts in ways that will help get a deeper latch.
That I like that idea a lot. I like that a lot. As we're talking about cholesterol, what just ran through my head is we may have some listeners on here, like you and I know what cholesterol is. You want to tell those that might be driving in the car right now going, what's cholesterol? Do you want to tell them what
Yeah.
it is? Because that's here before breast milk anyways.
Yes. So colostrum is that first milk. If you ever hear about milk being called liquid gold, that's what they're talking about. So your body will start producing it around week 20 of pregnancy. So you have it for a long time before baby comes. It's super high in protein. It's kind of like a extremely potent version of breast milk. It's about 30 times more potent than breast milk. It has all of your antibodies in it. It's very thick though, and it's usually kind of yellowy in color. Some moms will leak it in pregnancy, some won't. It's not really a strong indicator of, how your milk supply will be. But yeah, it's that first milk, and then your milk's not really going to transition over to what you would think of as milk, like your white, thinner substance until after that placenta is born. So there's no harm. You don't have a set amount in your breasts or anything that you can express. You can do it daily. nothing's going to happen to that colostrum until that placenta detaches.
That's great. Now, do you advise your moms to like research when we're talking about supplementing and everything, excuse me, finding the formula before they deliver so that they have something just on hand that they've maybe done a little research on just in case they need it, that they've got it at home? Do you think that's a good idea?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I always like to talk to families about, what is their true goal? How do they feel about supplementing? And then kind of go from there. If you're okay with formula, then yeah, let's talk about, just the most basic kinds of formula. There's, some that have different casein and whey, which are the main proteins. They have different ratios. So we talk about ones that are most breast-like. And then those moms who, are just really anti the formula, then we really work a lot on that antenatal hand expression.
Great. Now back to the class. Do you kind of go over holds with them, like different types of
Yeah.
holds?
Yes, that is another cornerstone of successful breastfeeding. So we go over multiple positions that, will probably be shown to them in the hospital or at the birth center. And then we also go over some more advanced ones as well for once baby's latching better and doing a lot of the initiation of the latch on their own.
Good. Yeah, I just had a birth over at Shea. You said you were there last night, and I thought that's funny. So was I. But just watching the mom, she had taken a class, and I started to kind of help her with a specific hold. And she's like, "Oh, Jules, I think I'm more comfortable with the football hold." Right.
Yeah.
And so she just instantly, you could tell she had been practicing and she just was kind of in that natural groove and felt very comfortable with it.
Mhm.
So I think these are the things that, like you said, are so good for women to take that class, get education. It is knowledge. Knowledge and power are this, gosh, it's a great combo when you're having a baby, right?
Yes, yes. It's so hard to learn a new skill in that postpartum phase. And I always remind families like breastfeeding is truly a skill. Yes, it's, it's natural. It's baby's way. Our bodies were made to feed our babies that way, but that doesn't make it easy. They come out knowing how to suck, but they don't care if they have a deep latch or not. It's a learning curve for both of you to do this skill. And so we really talk about the skill portion of it. And I always encourage moms not to get discouraged if they don't get it right away, because not all babies do have this amazing, perfect deep latch, and mom's nipples are perfect. Like there's a lot kind of on both sides of it that can take some time.
100%. It's not all mom, right? A lot
No.
of this is the baby. The baby, it's like right after birth, it's baby's first day of school,
Yeah.
right? So, talk to us about starting solids because I know you have a class on that, and that's a whole separate thing. But what would you say? I mean, you teach the class, but what would you say is a good time to begin to introduce solids for a baby?
So it's whenever baby is ready. And we do talk about in the Starting Solids workshop signs of readiness for your baby. So the American Academy of Pediatrics says that you can start at 4 months of age, but you really want to be looking for signs that baby is interested. Can they sit up, without assistance? Can they hold their head up? Can they do some of these milestones before we would want to do that? And then we talk a lot about, what foods should we introduce, nutritional requirements, because a lot of times how much milk they'll take will change. How can we make sure that we're not messing with that? The best type of foods to start with, what to do with like allergen foods. We go over all the most common allergies, how frequently to introduce foods. And then there's such a big push for baby led weaning. So we really talk about, the different options. If you want to do purees, if you want to do baby led weaning, how you would do either one of those, and kind of just help, give parents a little bit more information on what they think is going to work best for their family and for their baby.
And then do you talk about, okay, if they're, how much of the breastfeeding is shifting when
Mhm.
we are now working with also the babies eating solids?
Yes, and we definitely go into that and how to maintain supply. And how can we make sure, baby's still hitting their nutritional requirements? Because even though they're starting solids, they absorb a little bit of it, but a main portion of their nutrients is still going to come from breast milk or formula until a year of age. So how can we make sure baby is getting introduced to these foods, still getting all the nutrition they need, and not taking mom's supply? And we have a whole section on how we can do that successfully.
You teach so many things. I love it. But you are around, you have toddlers. Let me ask you this. You know how you shared with us that the first one wasn't as easy with breastfeeding, right? It was painful. It led you into what you're doing now. Did you see a difference in breastfeeding in general, like overall, with the second one?
Yes, I definitely knew what I was doing, but my second one had a ton of ties. So I still went
Oh,
through the pain and stuff, but I knew what it was that I was looking at and what I was doing and kind of what to go from there. So it was nice to already have that experience.
right. Yeah. And so this will be interesting with the third one coming.
Yes, we'll see. We'll see what struggles. It can be different for every baby, every mom. You might have a rock star first baby and then struggles with the second, or, struggles the first and the second one's amazing, or struggles with both of your children. It's so different every single time.
Well, is there something here before we close that you would love for moms, first time moms that are listening to this? And, most women want to breastfeed these days. Is there really something that you want to leave them with, like a takeaway about like not getting frustrated or, yes, I don't know. What would that be from you
So
for them?
I always want to tell moms that your weight as a parent, like the type of parent you're going to be, is not based on how you feed your baby. It's amazing if you want to breastfeed, and it's amazing if you want to formula feed, or if you want to do a combination of both. At the end of the day, you want to have healthy mom, healthy baby. And healthy mom doesn't just mean physically healthy, it means mentally as well. So if mentally it's not there, then that's okay. There's always 1,000 other ways we can help our children and 1,000 other ways we can mess them up. Breastfeeding, my children were both breastfed for 2 years and they eat dirt. So it's okay. Um, either way that you choose, you just want to choose what's going to be best for your family and give yourself grace. Don't put all of your weight on how good of a mother you are, solely on that, how you feed your baby.
I love that they eat dirt. Coming from a pediatric nurse and knowing it's okay. I had another mom on, a mom client of mine who's a doctor, and she said, and this was in the midst of COVID, like in the very beginning of COVID. And we had people calling in and moms were calling in, like, how can we help our children's immunity? And she's like, have them eat dirt.
Yeah, let them play outside, roll
Let
around
them
and
get dirt. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, see the things we learned from you guys. I love it. I love that you share all of this and you do have so much to offer. So I would like to put your phone number out. That's a great way for people to get a hold of you, right?
Yes, and you
Okay.
can text me, you can call me, and I can send you that information to sign up for the Lactation Network to see if you're covered. I have group breastfeeding classes and I do personal breastfeeding classes. Sometimes they're covered through insurance, sometimes they're not, but that's something that I'm willing to work with every family on for timing as well.
That's so nice. All right. So you listeners out there, you mamas, or if you're a dad listening and you're like, wow, I've got to get my significant other calling Lauren. Her number is 602-435-3877. Definitely reach out. Get the knowledge now. Get comfortable. And I think you'll feel that you have a higher success rate.
Mhm.
So Lauren, thank you so much. I know you have your hands full always with the family and you juggle a lot on your plate and you're very successful at all of it. And I feel blessed to know you and I'm excited for the new baby coming. Can't wait.
Ooh, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, you'll have to come back on. We're going to have to do another segment with you all about because you do the potty training too. So let's do one of those. It'll be great.
Absolutely. I would love to talk about it.
Okay. All right, Lauren, you have a great day. And all you listeners out there, thanks for being with us. And we will definitely be back on soon. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye bye. This segment brought to you by Cave Creek Beer Borough. Add a little personality to your next party, wedding, or corporate event. Invite Cave Creek Beer Bros to entertain your guests, arriving in style and serving your beer, wine, or beverage of choice. We guarantee they will be the talk of your party. Check them out at cavecreekbeerborough.com or call 602-505-8559. You'll be glad you did.